The Bible doesn't condemn the gambler who lost it all or the thief who ran off with the money. One of its harshest punishments goes to a man who simply played it safe. He didn't blow the cash, didn't make a bad bet. He just buried what he was given and returned it untouched. That's the guy who gets thrown into outer darkness. This is the parable of the talents, and it's one of the most unsettling financial lessons you'll ever read, because it's not attacking reckless people. It's attacking careful ones. Let me walk you through what actually happened here. A wealthy man is about to leave on a long trip. Before he goes, he divides up a massive sum of money between 3 servants. To one, he gives 5 talents. To another, 2. To the third, 1. Now, a talent back then was worth about 20 years of wages for a laborer. We're talking roughly $1 million in today's money. So even the guy who got 1 talent received something absolutely massive. The master leaves. The first 2 servants go out immediately and start trading with the money. They take risks. They invest. They put it to work. And by the time the master returns, both of them have doubled what they were given. 5 becomes 10. 2 becomes 4. The master is thrilled. He praises them identically. Doesn't matter that one made more than the other. What mattered was that they did something. Then the third servant steps forward. He says, "Master, I knew you were a harsh man. You harvest where you didn't plant. You gather where you didn't scatter seed. I was afraid, so I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, take what's yours." He's proud of this. You can hear it in his voice. He protected the money. He didn't lose a single cent. In his mind, he did the responsible thing. The master's response is brutal. He calls him wicked and lazy, takes the talent away from him, gives it to the guy who already has 10, and then casts him out into darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. That's not a slap on the wrist. That's complete rejection. So what just happened? Here's what most people miss. The third servant didn't fail because he didn't make money. He failed because he did nothing. His entire strategy was avoidance. He looked at what he'd been given and thought, if I do nothing, I can't be blamed for losing it. That mindset felt wise to him. It felt safe. It felt responsible. But the Bible calls it wicked. Why? Because his caution wasn't rooted in wisdom. It was rooted in fear. Fear of loss. Fear of judgment. Fear of being wrong. And instead of confronting that fear, he let it paralyze him. You see this everywhere today. People holding thousands in savings accounts earning almost nothing because they're terrified of the stock market. People who've been meaning to start a business for 5 years but never do because they might fail. People sitting on cash while inflation quietly eats away at its value, convincing themselves they're being smart. They're not being smart. They're being the third servant. The master makes something clear in his rebuke. He says, "You should have at least put my money with the bankers so I could have earned interest." That's the bare minimum, the absolute lowest effort move. Deposit it and walk away. Even that would have been acceptable. But doing nothing, burying it, that's inexcusable, because buried resources don't stay neutral. They decay. A talent buried in the ground for years doesn't come back worth the same. It corrodes. It loses value relative to everything around it. The servant thought he was preserving something, but he was actually letting it rot. This is exactly what happens when you hoard cash out of fear. Inflation is real. Opportunity cost is real. You think you're protecting yourself, but you're falling behind. The money might look the same on paper, but its purchasing power is shrinking every single year. The third servant's logic was, at least I didn't lose anything. But he did lose something. He lost time. He lost growth. He lost the opportunity to do what he was actually entrusted to do. And here's the thing that makes this parable so uncomfortable. It's not aimed at lazy people. It's not a warning for those who waste everything or throw caution to the wind. It's aimed directly at cautious, responsible-minded people who think safety equals faithfulness. The man didn't steal, didn't party with the money, didn't make a risky investment that tanked. He just wanted to avoid making a mistake. And the Bible treats that as one of the worst things he could have done, because fear disguised as responsibility is still just fear. And when fear keeps you from doing anything, it becomes the very thing that destroys you. You avoid loss so carefully that you guarantee it. The punishment seems extreme until you realize what's actually being punished. Not failure, not loss, inaction driven by fear, the refusal to engage with what you've been given because you're too afraid of what might go wrong. That's what gets condemned. Playing it safe to the point where nothing happens at all. So what's the alternative? This applies directly to how people handle money today. You'll meet someone sitting on $50,000 in a savings account earning 0.5% interest. They'll tell you they're being responsible. They'll say they don't want to risk losing it. Meanwhile, inflation is running at 3 or 4% annually, which means they're losing purchasing power every single year. They think they're protecting their money, but they're actually watching it shrink in real terms. Then you'll meet someone else with the same $50,000 who puts it into a diversified portfolio. Index funds, bonds, real estate. Something that actually grows over time. They're not gambling. They're not throwing it into meme stocks or crypto hoping to get rich overnight. They're simply putting their money to work instead of letting it decay. That's the difference between the first two servants and the third. Action versus avoidance. The parable makes it clear that even minimal effort would have been acceptable. Deposit it with the bankers, earn interest. That's the lowest bar imaginable. No skill required, no intelligence needed. Just the willingness to do something instead of nothing. But the third servant couldn't even manage that. His fear was so consuming that it paralyzed him completely. He convinced himself that doing nothing was the safest option, and it ended up being the most destructive choice he could have made. This is where the modern application gets uncomfortable. How many people are living exactly like the third servant right now? Holding on to cash out of fear, avoiding investments because they might lose money, staying in jobs they hate because switching feels risky, never starting the business they've been thinking about for years because failure seems worse than inaction. They're not being wise, they're being paralyzed. And paralysis disguised as prudence is still just paralysis. The master's response reveals something crucial about how God views this. He doesn't just take back the one talent, he gives it to the servant who already has 10. That seems harsh until you realize what's being illustrated. Resources flow toward those who use them well. Opportunity compounds for people who engage, and those who refuse to act don't just stay neutral. They fall further behind. The servant thought he was preserving something, but he was actually guaranteeing loss. Loss of the chance to be part of something bigger than himself. He was so focused on not losing that he missed the entire point of why he'd been given anything in the first place. The parable ends with the third servant being cast out into darkness. That's the part people struggle with. It feels extreme, but it's not punishing bad results. It's confronting something far more dangerous. The refusal to engage with what you've been entrusted with because you're too afraid of what might happen. Fear that produces nothing isn't faithfulness. It's the opposite. The man didn't lose the money. He lost the opportunity. And the Bible treats that as serious, not because risk is good, but because fear that produces nothing isn't faith. It's avoidance. So where does that leave you? If you're holding cash because the market scares you, you're not being responsible. You're being the third servant. If you've been thinking about investing for months but keep waiting for the perfect moment, you're burying your talent. If you tell yourself you're just being careful while opportunities pass you by, you're choosing paralysis over stewardship. The parable doesn't end with a motivational speech. It ends with a servant removed from everything because he let fear make his decisions. That's the warning. Not that you might fail. That you might do nothing at all. You weren't given resources to protect them. You were given them to use them. The question waiting for all of us eventually is simple. What did you do with what you were given? And, I kept it safe, won't be the answer that God wants. If this hit differently than you expected, Kingdom Finances breaks down more biblical money principles that actually apply to your real life. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next.